How do you see AI changing the role of finance leaders or small business owners in the next 12 to 24 months?
Yeah, so I think there's two big areas of impact. The first is there's a lot of work that both finance leaders and small business owners do that I call the non-negotiables. They have to invoice their customers, pay their vendors. They've got to close the books, file their taxes. There's all these things that they spend a lot of time on today that they can't choose not to do because there's something more valuable they could be spending their time on. And so the first big impact, and this is where historically we've spent most of our efforts, it's automating away that work and creating a sense of confidence that it's being done in a accurate and confident way. So that frees up time for finance leaders and business owners to work on more strategic things. And our objective here is to use AI to help them to succeed when they're doing these more strategic things. So for a CFO, it means better forecasting. It means participating in transactions and providing better guidance, perhaps doing risk management or valuation. But it's this shift, if you will, from being a doer to a reviewer on the non-negotiable stuff, and then to providing real strategic value in this time that we're hoping to free them up from.
So you talked about sort of using automation to free up time. What's your take on AI hallucinating? How can your users be so sure that whatever the AI has helped them get done is correct? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think the answer starts with the developers of AI like Sage taking a bit of a humble position, right? We have to accept that AI is fallible, right? All the magic that we can do with AI comes from the fact that we're training it to be creative, like a human, right? To do the sorts of work that require human creativity. So it is going to be fallible. And so you start from this premise that in every way that I design my products, I have to design around, psychological safety and trust between the human and the technology. And so you provide lots of ways for users to verify the work. You establish rules with your engineers, like don't let an LLM do math. That's kind of an obvious one. But I think if you start with that philosophy that this is really powerful and kind of magical technology, but it's magical because it's like a human and it's fallible, then you create the whole experience around that.
Fine. No, that makes perfect sense. What's a concrete example of how you guys are embedding AI or automation to simplify finance or empower decision making?
Yeah, so some of the capabilities that have been in our products for a while now are AI that can process financial documents. So, for example, taking an invoice, reading the data off the invoice, categorizing it, and entering it into the ledger, using AI to match invoices to purchase orders, using AI to identify whether or not there are duplicates or other potential problems with these invoices. And so this is, I think, a really good example of automating that non-negotiable work that I talked about. Now we have AI agents that we've deployed into some of our products now, where you can ask it a question like, "I've got $100,000 to spend on payables this month. How do you suggest I allocate that across my open payables?" And it'll look at things like, can it take advantage of cash discounts? Are there some vendors that are particularly critical to the supply chain? And it can do that sort of thinking to give you a starting point on how to apply that allocated budget to paying those vendors.
So I guess some aspects of AI has been around for a while. You mentioned being able to read a document. I mean, OCR, reading, converting images to text is like 20, 30 years old or something. And I've been using an app to scan receipts for 10 years and it
Mhm.
categorizes it, it's a restaurant or it's $10 or whatever. What are the kind of true groundbreaking? Maybe it's what you mentioned towards the end there. What are the kind of truly recent AI evolutions? If you can elaborate on
Well,
that.
yeah. So we've hit a bit of an inflection point where we've been using AI in very carefully orchestrated ways, to do specific tasks within a well-defined workflow. And it hasn't so much changed the user's experience as it's sped it up, right? Everything is just faster now, but it essentially works the same. With AI agents, we're able to now say, okay, we've moved on to a new way of working. And these agents are starting to now replace those traditional user interfaces. And so instead of running a report, you ask a question. Um, Instead of going to a screen with it looks like a very complex workbench where you do reconciliation or choosing things to pay, AI is doing a lot of that work for you and coming back to you with recommendations. And it's in a very different user interface that's more intuitive and more natural. So I think the key, though, is that in this new world where we have those agents that are doing this work, they are using those tools that we created to read an invoice, to classify a transaction, to review a transaction for errors. We're very careful to make sure that when they're doing this type of work, we're giving them access to tools that enable them to be the most successful and for us to have the most confidence that they're doing it right.
And sort of building on that, then you obviously interact with users, and what are the main pain points that frustrate them today, and that you're tackling and perhaps tackling different than some of your competitors?
Yeah, so the number one thing that a CFO wants is to close their books faster, like full stop. That is, one of the biggest considerations that drives them to evaluate new software is they're under pressure to get the books closed faster, so the business can make decisions faster, right, and with more confidence. And we have to deploy AI to do that. There's really no way to get it down to 0 days without AI. The problem is that we have to cross that trust barrier with the AI. So you mentioned earlier that you've got AI that can read an invoice. And I suspect that AI is 85, 90% accurate. If we're going to get to a point where a CFO is ready to change the way they work to leverage AI to do all of these tasks, it's got to be much more accurate than that. And it's got to be delivered in a way that gives that CFO a sense of confidence in the way things are working. And so one of the hard lessons for me has been realizing that we've had to develop our own models. I pushed the team early on. Why can't we just use off the shelf OCR to do this? And it wasn't just that the accuracy wasn't quite where we need it. It was the accuracy for specific things like a due date or a total. We're a long ways from where they needed to be. And so we've had to go and develop our own models that just look for the due date on an invoice or just look for the total on an invoice. And I think this is a really big advantage for us because we've got such scale with our customers and we've got the right sort of trusted relationship with our customers. We can train the models to be very accurate because we have so much data that we can train it from. Now, the other thing that we're doing is we also realized that some of the AI can't actually learn from the masses. It needs to learn from the individual customer. So if you think about that invoice, that we're learning from lots of customers to read it correctly, when it comes to coding that, what's the right expense account? What's the right project center or cost center? We have to have models that are trained on the individual customer's data. And so we've also had to build this fairly sophisticated infrastructure that automates training, deploying, operating models on a customer by customer basis for these sorts of things. And both of these things come together to achieve the degree of accuracy that we have to achieve to give CFOs confidence.
And what do you think is the one thing that most people misunderstand about how AI will impact accounting or financial management in general?
The accounting industry is about to go through a rapid period of growth. Um, you know, far from AI killing the industry, it's going to be the tool that empowers the industry to create much more value. I kind of come back to my comment about the non-negotiables. Like this is not the value that accountants bring, right? The value they bring is not invoicing customers, getting paying vendors. It's being that strategic advisor when there's a transaction, there's an opportunity. It's taking the lead on strategic planning. It's being sort of the voice of confidence, the source of assurance in the way the data is represented and how the company is behaving. And we value these things far more than we value issuing invoices. So my firmly held belief is that the industry becomes more valuable, the profession becomes more exciting as a result of AI.